President Bush, remind me of the 3 points, will you, because I'm getting. Question, will it end? President Bush, I'm getting a little older. Question, will it end by the time you leave office? Do you approve of the President Bush, I hope so. I'm for a sustainable ceasefire. And a definition of a sustainable. Ceasefire is that Hamas stops firing rockets into Israel. And there will not be a sustainable ceasefire if they continue firing rockets. I happen to believe the choice is Hamas's to make. And we believe that the best way to ensure that there is a sustainable ceasefire is to work with Egypt to stop the smuggling of arms into the Gaza that enables Hamas to continue to fire rockets. And so countries that supply weapons to Hamas have got to stop. And the international community needs to continue to pressure them to stop providing weapons. Hamas, obviously, if they're interested in a sustainable ceasefire, needs to stop arming. And then, of course, countries contingent to the Gaza need to work to stop the smuggling. And it's a difficult task. I mean, there's tunnels and, you know. Great opportunities for people who want to continue to try to disrupt democracy to provide the weapons to do so. Second part of your question, please, ma'am. Question, do you approve of the Israeli conduct in this? President Bush, I think Israel has a right to defend herself. Obviously, in any of these kinds of situations, I would hope that she would continue to be mindful of innocent folks. And that they help, expedite the delivery of humanitarian aid. And third, why haven't we achieved peace? That's a good question. It's been a long time since they've had peace in the Middle East. Step 1 is to have a vision for what peace would look like. And in 2002, on the steps of the Rose Garden, I gave a speech about a two-state solution. Two states, two democracies living side by side in peace. And we have worked hard to advance that idea. First thing is to convince all parties that the two states were necessary for peace. And one thing that's happened is that most people in the Middle East now accept the two-state solution as the best way for peace. Most Palestinians want their own state, and most Israelis understand their needs. To be a democracy on their border in order for there to be long-lasting peace. The challenge, of course, has been to lay out the conditions so that a peaceful state can emerge, in other words. Helping the Palestinians in the West Bank develop security forces. Which we have worked hard to do over the past years. And those security forces are now becoming more efficient, and Prime Minister Fayyad is using them effectively. The challenge is to help the Palestinians develop a democracy, I mean. And a vibrant economy in there that will help lead to democracy. And the challenge, of course, is always complicated by the fact that people are willing to murder to stop the advance of freedom. And so the Hamas, or for that matter Al-Qaeda, or other extremist groups, are willing to use violence to prevent free states from emerging. And that's the big challenge. And so the answer is, will this ever happen? I think it will. And I know we have advanced the process. Yes, Suzanne. Finally got your name right, after how many years? 6 years? Question, 8 years. President Bush, 8 years. You used to be known as Suzanne. Now you're Suzanne. Question, Suzanne. Thank you. President Bush, I'm Gaj. Question, in your 2002 State of the Union address, you identified you. As threats as an axis of evil Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Iraq is relatively calm, North Korea is no longer on the terrorist threat list. How would you define? If, in fact, there is an axis of evil? And what is the greatest and most urgent threat when it comes to security that Barack Obama has to deal with? President Bush, the most urgent threat that he'll have to deal with. And other presidents after him will have to deal with, is an attack on our homeland. You know, I wish I could report that's not the case, but there's still an enemy out there. that would like to inflict damage on Americans. And that will be the major threat. North Korea is still a problem. There is a debate in the intel community about how big a problem they are. But one of my concerns is that there might be a highly enriched uranium program. And therefore it is really important that out of the six-party talks comes a strong verification regime. In other words, in order to advance our relations with North Korea. The North Korean government must honor the commitments it made to allow for strong verification measures to be in place. To ensure that they don't develop a highly enriched uranium program, for example. So they're still dangerous, and Iran is still dangerous. Yes. Question: you said in an interview earlier this weekend, one of these, I guess, exit interviews, that President Bush, this is the ultimate exit interview. Question: that you think the Republican Party needs to be more inclusive. Who needs to hear that message inside the Republican Party? President Bush, you see, I am concerned that, in the wake of the defeat, that the temptation will be to look inward and to say, well, here's a litmus test you must adhere to. This party will come back. But the party's message has got to be that different points of view are included in the party. And take, for example, the immigration debate. That's obviously a highly contentious issue. And the problem with the outcome of the initial round of the debate was that some people said, Well, Republicans don't like immigrants. Now, that may be fair or unfair, but that's the image that came out. And, you know, if the image is we don't like immigrants, then there's probably somebody else out there saying, well, if they don't like the immigrants, they probably don't like me, as well. And so my point is that our party has got to be compassionate and broad-minded. I remember the 1964 elections. My dad happened to be running for the United States Senate then, and you know, got landslide with the Johnson landslide in the state of Texas. But it wasn't just George Bush who got defeated, the Republican Party was pretty well decimated at the time. At least that's what I think that's how the pundits viewed it. And then 66 there was a resurgence. And the same thing can happen this time, but we just got to make sure our message is broad-gauged and compassionate. That we care about people's lives, and we've got a plan to help them improve their lives. Jake, yes. How you doing? Question, I'm good. How you doing, sir? President Bush, so what have you been doing since 2000? Never mind. Question, working my way to this chair. President Bush, so are you going to be here for President Obama? Question, I will. I will. President Bush, that's a pretty cool job. Question, it's not bad. President Bush, yes. Question, yours might be better. President Bush, yes what, retirement. Question, in the past, when you've been asked to address bad poll numbers or your own popularity. You've said that history will judge that you did the right thing, that you thought you did the right thing. But without getting into your motives or your goals, I think a lot of people including Republicans, including some members of your own administration. Have been disappointed at the execution of some of your ideals, whether Iraq, or Katrina or the economy. What would your closing message be to the American people about the execution of these goals? President Bush, well, first of all, hard things don't happen overnight, Jake. And when the history of Iraq is written, historians will analyze, for example, the decision on the surge. The situation was looked like it was going fine and then violence for. A period of time began to throw the progress of Iraq into doubt. And rather than accepting the status quo and saying, oh, it's not worth it or the politics makes it difficult or the party may end up being not doing well in the elections because of the violence in Iraq. I decided to do something about it and sent 30,000 troops in as opposed to withdrawing. And so that part of history is certain, and the situation did change. Now the question is, in the long run, will this democracy survive? And that's going to be the challenge for future presidents.